Good evening and welcome to the Watsonville City Planning Commission for March 3rd, 2015. Anyone wishing to address the Planning Commission is asked to fill out a yellow speaker card for recording purposes and place it in the box at the podium in the council chambers. Please state your name before speaking. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. To use Spanish interpretation devices, obtain one from the table by the interpretation booth. Turn it on and make sure it is on channel 0. Hang it around your neck with the front facing out. If you cannot hear, check to make sure the device is on and unobstructed. It only works inside the council chambers. Please return before you leave. Thank you.
Buenas noches. Para dirigirse a la Comisión de Planificación, complete la tarjeta amarilla y antes de hablar, colóquela en la caja que está en el podio en la Cámara del Concilio Municipal. Por favor, indique su nombre y tome en cuenta que está limitado a 3 minutos. Para usar los aparatos de interpretación en español, obtenga un aparato de la mesa junto a la caseta de interpretación que está acá. Préndalo y use el canal 0, cuélgueselo en el cuello con el frente hacia afuera. Si no puede oír, revise que el aparato esté encendido y sin obstrucciones. Solo funciona dentro de la Cámara del Concilio. Regréselo antes de partir.
Roll call of commissioners.
Dana,
Here.
Gonzalez, Jenkins, Kammer,
Here.
Rivera,
Here.
Gomez Contreras,
Here.
Corley.
Here. And I know Gonzalez called me and let me know he's going to be a little bit late. 2.0, Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands.
3.0, petitions and oral communications. Oral communications from the general public and planning commission. This time is set aside for members of the general public to address the planning commission on any item not on the agenda, which is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the planning commission. No action or discussion shall be taken on any item present except that any planning commissioner may respond to statements made or questions asked, or may ask questions for clarification. All matters of administration nature will be referred to staff. All matters relating to the planning commission will be noted in the minutes and may be subject for discussion at a future meeting or referred to staff for clarification and report. Any planning commission may place matters brought up under oral communication on future agenda. This is a public meeting. Anybody from the public would like to come up and say anything to the planning commission that is not on the agenda? Please come on up. Seeing none, I close the public communication and bring it back to the planning commission if any planning commissioners like to say anything. No? Seeing none, we're moving on. 4.0, consent agenda.
Just advisement, the city attorney has requested that we continue the consent agenda, which is the minutes from the previous meeting, which dealt with cell towers. He wants to go over those minutes before you formally approve them to make sure, because of the potential for litigation on this, that we address the issues that we need to. So we would recommend that you continue this item to a future meeting.
So do we need to make a motion or
You
just?
should, yes.
Okay.
I move to wait till the following meeting to approve the minutes.
Yeah, we
from
should be
last
able
month.
to have it done by then.
I'll second that.
We have a first and second. Can I get roll call, please?
Dana,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Cammer,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Gomez Contreras,
Yes.
Corley.
Yes.
So I'm also doing two hats. I'll be up here and I'm also down at the table. I don't see our applicant for our first item. I'd recommend that you take the second item out of order and we go with the Marin Street townhomes first, if that's your desire.
Yes, it is. 5.2, a public hearing to consider recommendation to the City Council on applicant PP 2014-196 for a special use permit with design review and tentative map to allow construction of a 16 three-bedroom for sale townhouse units at the corner of Marin Street and Freedom Boulevard. Can we have staff presentation, please?
In regards to which item? Yeah, we'll have public testimony after. Yeah, all right. Thank you, Chair Corley, members of the Commission and Community. I'm Keith Boyle with Community Development Department. Tonight's application is for a special use permit with design review and a tentative map for a 16-unit project at the corner of Marin Street and Freedom in this back lot here, approximately 1 acre site, is zone neighborhood commercial with a general plan of general commercial. The zone allows residential with a use permit and encourages mixed use, which this would reflect. There was a project that was previously approved on the site in 2004, which included 22 units. It was a different applicant. At that time, those applicants requested to utilize the RM3 standards for determining density, and this is consistent with what the current applicant, Mr. Farhat, is requesting. The project also includes a subdivision, and because of that, this project is recommended to the City Council. You don't take final action on this. Your action basically is a recommendation to City Council on the subdivision and all the design review and the use permit. This is an aerial site. The building, this was a commercial building. It used to be a restaurant. The parking was established for a restaurant. There's two parcels. The parcel line basically comes across here. The project as proposed is 16 three-bedroom, 2.5 bath units. The units are 1,317 square feet with 2 car garages at about 456 square feet. Each of the units proposes a substantial fenced rear yard open space with a minimum of 716 square feet, going up to 2,000 square feet. The site, as developed, was originally developed as a restaurant, now is used as a mix of office and retail. Mixed use is encouraged in the area. Generally, the general plan encourages higher density development as a good transition between commercial and adjacent residential. You have a medium density residential on the other side of this. The project itself meets the front side and rear yard setbacks, the front being 20, the sides being 5, the rear being 10. All those standards are met. The project meets both private and common open space requirements of the district. This gives you a little overview of what is proposed in the project. This is the site where the 16 units would be coming off. The primary driveway is currently there. It would be a 25-foot driveway with access going through the adjacent parking lot. That would be the secondary access. The project was designed by Lattanzio Incorporated, which is a well-known Santa Cruz architect. Several projects are out there that reflect the similar nature of what's being proposed. They're quite well designed. This project is a substantial improvement over what the previous project included. This includes side-by-side two-car garages instead of the tandem garages that were previously shown. The project architectural elevations are better articulated, better roof design, a variety of other issues that will make this a much more desirable looking project. The three-story project design is consistent with the project that was previously approved. And the guest parking that's proposed is more accessible to the project. The owners, and there was a letter that was submitted that was distributed to you from an attorney from the property owner. There was a conditional easement discussion that was included in your packet. There seems to be a dispute between the private property owner and the applicant in regards to how that text can be used. And we have determined, basically, condition 14 that's in your tentative map requires that the adjacent property owner and the applicant come to an agreement before a final map is recorded for this. So generally, we feel that the letter that's in front of you is addressed by existing conditions, but I think the person who's concerned is here in the audience and can talk about that in more detail. Again, this is the site. These are the proposed elevations of the project, the two-car garages that are off of the common driveway. These are the primary elevations that will be seen from both Freedom Boulevard and Marin Street. You will not see the garages. Those are off the internal driveway. The project does meet the parking requirements for the existing office building. It's 7,668 square feet. If it was done for straight retail, it would require 31 parking spaces. Or if it was office, it would be required 26 parking spaces. For the residential project, there is, for 32 spaces are required, 2 spaces per unit in garages. And then there's 1 parking space for every 4 bedrooms, which calculates to 12, which is proposed on the plan with a total of 75 parking spaces required. There's 82 on the site, so it meets the parking requirements. The project, originally, there was a negative declaration that was prepared for the larger project and was circulated and went through all the standard process. The unit was a larger project, therefore that negative declaration was used with the understanding that this project is smaller and has fewer impacts. So we just incorporated the same mitigation measures and did not go through recirculation, which is allowable. Some of the mitigations that were incorporated, that no left turn would be allowed from the parking lot during AM or PM hours, dust control measures, which are standard, and that the foundation meets the mitigations that were listed in the soils report. For staff is recommending that the townhouse project is consistent with the district requirements and will not adversely affect properties or businesses in the vicinity. And staff is recommending Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the use permit, design review, and tentative map subject to the findings and conditions. Concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any of the planning commissioners have questions of staff? Yes. Toby.
Keith, let's look at attachment 2, page 3 of 15, and it may be illustrated on others. Yeah, attachment 2 as well. Attachment 2 may be a better illustration of areas that are going to be new concrete or new asphalt. The dark areas. And I'm curious about the curved one. It's sort of a reversed C, page 2 of 15, attachment 2, which goes across, I gather, the parcel adjacent to it. And I take it that's part of the question of an agreement
This is the area of, the letter that was submitted. This is the area of interpretation that I'll let the applicant and anybody else in the audience express the issues that are involved with it.
Okay.
Generally, they do appear to be disputes between private property owners in regards to one person sold it to the other person, but don't want to go into details. It's not really my prerogative. Mr. Farhat and the other owner are much better able to discuss those issues.
All right, thank you. Continuing, if I may, it mentions that Freedom Boulevard along there has a current condition at the intersection Marin and Freedom, operating level of F. What does F mean there?
Bad.
I see, not failing, but just bad.
Yeah, FD is an acceptable level of service. F is the existing level of service. And this project doesn't really change what that is. It's already at F. And that's only at the PM peak hours. So this project is recommending that no turns be allowed from the driveway during those peak hours, and that signage be put up to address the issue. But they won't be able to solve the existing level of service, which is less than allowable capacity.
Do we have other instances in the community of such signage with limited left turns?
Yes.
And how successful have they been? Do we have any idea?
Hard to say. You know,
Okay.
people do what they do.
It's a pretty busy area because of Martinelli coming in, Freedom going around the corner to the right, Lincoln splitting off, etc. And people tend to accelerate after they come out of the light on Martinelli because they're jockeying for position. They're trying to get over to the Lincoln left turn, etc. What has the city planned with respect to Freedom Boulevard as it goes beyond that Lincoln curve? I know that there's some plans to definitely redesign Freedom from there down to at least Green Valley and perhaps as far as Airport, but
Right. The long-term vision is to establish, which is in the 2030 general plan, to establish medians and other things that limit the amount of left turn abilities that people have from the unrestricted center turn lanes that are up and down. A lot of those turns create the bottlenecks that are out there during the long, but in regards to that being a realistic short-term project, highly unlikely. It will take many years to actually implement that in regards to funding and everything else that would be necessary. So it's a long-term plan. But that, again, it's part of our general plan, the 2030, when we ever get it adopted. But it is something that the traffic folks could talk to you. They're not here at the moment in a little bit more detail, but it's not something that will be happening overnight.
thank you.
You had a question, Rick?
I did. So I can see the acre, Keith. Can you identify where this easement is that's in dispute? Is it, and the other question I had probably dovetails with that is there an easement to go all the way through the parking lot and onto Freedom Boulevard? That's the second entry exit to the project?
That is the implied, that if you look at the attachment 3, common area maintenance and easement agreement, there is not a formal easement that's recorded on the property. this easement agreement is what the property owner and the purchaser, who's Mr. Farhat, had the understanding, and now there's a misunderstanding of what this means. And that's why we have the condition 14 to make sure that there is a recorded easement before it's finalized, which, again, this goes to city council, and it would have to go to city council again to record a final map. So there's multiple opportunities for the property owner and the adjacent owner to come to some understanding of that. Where
We're not going to settle this dispute this evening, obviously.
No, and it's not really the planning commission's prerogative to do it. It is a dispute between private property owners. One purchased the property from, and I'll let Mr. Farhat talk about that in more detail.
But in terms of approving it, then, we're essentially approving it with the condition that these parties come to an agreement?
Yes, and again, you're not approving it tonight. You're making a recommendation to the city council.
We're making a recommendation that for the project, provided that the private parties come to some kind of conclusion on the dispute.
That's correct.
So we're not taking a side. There's not a way that we would be able to, obviously with attorneys' letters and so on, we can't interpret.
Right, and I'll let Mr. Farhat and the public testimony go into it in a little bit more detail. It's just my general understanding of it. But again, it's up to the private property owners and the adjacent owner to discuss what the issue is. In regards to your specific question, the area that Mr. Farhat is indicating are these are the guest parking spaces. There's 12 of them along this edge, and he does indicate that he believes there's an easement to cross this and go out onto Freedom Boulevard. So that was explained, and it's included as attachment 3. But there isn't a formal easement that's recorded, and there might have to be more detail worked out.
And there's no dispute on the parking, the ones coming up against the property line over here, all of these on the side of the...
Which this?
The ones that are on the actual commercial property that come up against the units.
These here?
Yeah,
These are the ones that Mr. Farhat has recommended as the guest parking. So these are the parking spaces that are in dispute with that letter.
Okay, so it's the parking spaces, it's going across the parking lot, all of that still
Yes,
needs to be...
that is what the question is it does that document that was provided, what does it provide?
Okay.
So
But our out is we're basically pushing that to the side tonight. We won't be deciding that question of the right or
you'll
wrong.
hear what the applicants have to say. It's up to you to determine how you want to move forward. I'm recommending that the existing condition requires that the applicant and the adjacent property owner come to an agreement before there's any final recordation of this map. So
And that's in your that's our part of our recommendation.
that's on condition 14 on the tentative map approval is already there. So I think that I have not heard the public testimony. I will listen carefully, and and maybe there's some adjustments we need to make.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Anna.
I just want to clarify something. On that same map, on the left side, is that an easement or is that part of the property?
This here?
Yes.
This is an existing part of the property. The Mr. Farhat owns this. This is the property line right here. Mr. Farhat owns this. The MJM folks own this property. And the area that he does not own are these areas that are, the part of the dispute is the guest parking and access. So this area is an existing driveway that is part of Mr. Farhat's property.
Okay, so anything to the left or to the right, to the right of that T?
Yeah,
That's going to be the property that needs the easement.
This area over here is the area that's in dispute.
Okay.
So this area is the property line, but he requires the guest parking to meet the standards.
Okay.
So
I had another question too, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring it up, but on our information, we had 5 potential impacts, and I had a question about number 5, the water usage. And again, I don't know if this is appropriate to bring it up now, but I mean, we're in a drought, and I was wondering, you know, if we've got a lot of new projects going in. There are hotels going in. There are other new housing projects going in. What is the water situation in Watsonville, and how is that going to work into, you know, adding new units?
There's a general voluntary 20% reduction, but in reality, the city of Watsonville is in pretty good shape. We have our own well system that pumps from the groundwater basin that's been used forever. Basically, there are no state restrictions on pumping of those facilities, so there is no mandatory rationing or requirements. The only thing we're doing is a voluntary per the discussion of the state. But in regards to ability to provide water, there is not a significant restriction for the city. We use our existing wells. We are not a significant user of the basin. We use 15% of the water in the overall basin as compared to other uses do 85% of the pumping. So in regards to city use, we have done substantial parts to alleviate the issues of regarding the drought. We helped the PV Water District develop the recycle water plant that recycles 4 acre feet a year that is given to ag, et cetera, et cetera. We can't count that actually, but we have gone a long way to meet the issues related to water.
Thank you very much.
Any other planning commissioners have any questions of staff? I just have one quick question. Besides the parking in the garage, there's no on-site parking located on this parcel, is there?
Not on this parcel. The other parking is on the adjacent parcel.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Would you like to come up and say a few words?
Evening, Commissioners. Raid Farhad, applicant. Just a few things as far as Keith mentioned. He pretty much did a great job presenting it. The one thing he did say was there is no recorded easement on the property, and there is a recorded easement since 2001 that is recorded, and it's on the prelim as far as that's there. Again, like Keith mentioned, the easement issue is a private matter, and I'm hoping that the applicants and I could, or the neighbors and I could come to an agreement at some time. I don't want to get too involved with that because of the potential litigation, but I do have over 1,000 pages of documents pertaining to this project. I bought the property. The applicant sold me the property, represented to me as agents about the property. They bought the property from me a few years after that. So it's very well documented as far as the use of the property. And we're both pretty familiar with what's there. It dates back to 2001. But the project itself, beautiful project. It's in a blighted area, and enhance the neighborhood. Market rate, so we get all the benefits as far as the tax benefits and whatnot. We'll have two, Keith, affordable housing units that's required at 15%. But even though they're market rate, they're still going to be at an affordable price, which I think Watsonville needs. I mean, currently there's 2 townhomes for sale or condos for sale in the city of Watsonville. Anything under $400,000, there's really nothing available. So that's kind of where the purchase price has to be for the masses of the Watsonville population. It's a parking lot there now. It'll be a great project. I'll do everything I can to enhance Watsonville. I've built other projects in Watsonville, so you guys could see the kind of construction that we do and the building that we do. I think it'll be a good project, considering it's a parking lot now and not bringing any revenue whatsoever to the city. So I'm not going to discuss the easement, but there is a title report that indicates an easement that was recorded back in 2001 before either one of the parties, myself and the applicants, owned either one of the properties. So, and if you guys have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Any of the planning commission?
Just one quick one. So, Raid, the one that's recorded in 2001, that's not on the map, doesn't show what the, is it the easement, the entire lot to go across it? Is there a,
So
in
the easement's pretty
2001
vague. The easement, what it reads basically, and I'll just read a paragraph of it, basically. The parties hereto confirm they're having entered an agreement for an easement for access to, for ingress and egress, and for parking and maintenance involving the real property described here and above. So it talks about parking, ingress and egress. Usually when it comes to a tentative map or a final map, because nobody knows when they enter an agreement exactly where the lines are going to go. Like Keith mentioned, your condition 14 is where it specifies that there has to be an agreement because it has to be identified for mutual benefit for both parties as to where exactly it is.
Yes.
Right now, it says that we have, ingress and egress and parking to and from, and for the use, which is pretty much what we're asking for. It just doesn't specify exactly where those parking spaces are. Without having a tentative map, there's no way of knowing where they exactly would be.
go.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any strong feelings as to where the affordable units are located? I see them marked across from each other along that series, or was that your choice or the city's choice, or?
They're pretty much going to be mirror units, so all the units are
Right.
pretty much going to be the same. Same amenities that they're going to have, granite countertops, laminate floors. They're not going to be of lower quality because of the affordable housing designation.
No, it's just the location of them that I was curious about. They're identified on one of the maps.
This is the map that
as
shows.
as across from each other.
This is one of them, this is the other one, as recommended by the applicant.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding your question. You're asking me where they're at, or
Why did you select those two? I was just curious.
I just picked two. They're all identical units.
Yes, I realize that.
yeah. So
Right, thank you.
Yes.
I had a couple of questions about, they're sort of related to parking, but how will you enforce because I noticed that it said that the garages have to be used for parking. How is that going to be enforced? Because in Watsonville, that tends to be an issue. It's an issue in a lot of places because of the lack of affordable housing. So is there going to be an HOA? Is that going to be enforced by some entity?
correct. There will be an HOA and CC&Rs, and also one of the conditions. So if you see the condition sheet, it's not a light condition sheet. I think there's 60, 70 conditions that I have to meet. So by all means, even if you guys do decide on recommending this for approval to the city council, there's still a laundry list of things that I have to do. I think one of the conditions that is on there is painting the curbs red. Is that right, Keith? As far as it talks about
In regards to fire
hydrant, so it'll be
yeah.
painted red, so there would be no parking on there. And where the subject is located, as far as parking, it'll be pretty far for, not saying impossible, I'm not going to sit here and say nobody's going to park on the street, but it's a pretty far distance from where Marin Street is to where these locations, and there's kind of a hillside. So as far as the parking on the street or added to the congestion that we do have in Watsonville, we won't have that. The fact that there's, in essence, no other place for them to park other than the garage, that's one of the ways we're mitigating as far as them actually using the garage for a garage, because there will be no other parking for them.
The other question I had, or thank you for that. The other question I had is, do the units need to be owner occupied?
They do not. So they could, they're for sale units, so an investor could potentially buy one, rent it out, or they could live in one, and they could live in it and occupy it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other planning commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much.
I'll be here if you guys have any questions.
This is a public hearing. Anybody from the public would like to come up and speak?
My name is Anna DiBenedetto. I'm a local attorney, and I'm representing the adjoining property owner. And I appreciate that the Planning Commission is basically confirming that they're just making a recommendation and they're not going to address the parking easement tonight. But I think it might make sense to keep it at this level. We have a few questions, and maybe the applicant can address some. We're concerned about the parking easement. The proposed development does exceed the scope of the parking easement. The parking easement contemplated that the easement area and those parking spaces would be used for an office building. I mean, I think it's pretty clear without reading into the record what the scope of the parking agreement says, that this is going to be obviously a much different project because we all know that all 12 of those spaces will be used at all times. There's nothing in the easement agreement that talks about overnight parking, weekend parking. That's of concern to my clients with respect to potential vandalism, things like that. There's also mentioned in the applicant's recommendations that there's going to be, that the easement actually includes also the right to put, you can see it in the square right below the parking spaces, that's supposedly going to be a trash enclosure. And that's on my client's property, and so obviously that concerns them and constricts not only what they can do with their property, but their own parking. So there's no, we would like to get some feedback on that, or perhaps that's something that they can discuss, the applicant, with my clients. There was also, on one of the maps that I saw, a proposed underground utility easement burdening my client's property that ran from Marin Street right along the parking spots. I'm not sure if that is still something that's proposed, but I'm not sure where they're running their utilities. There was discussion that it was going to run across my client's property. So I think it would make sense to give this one more round of review at this level after the parties, after the applicant and my clients have had an opportunity to sit down and discuss the easement agreement, discuss some of these other issues. It absolutely affects my client's ability to develop their property because they will no longer have any parking. If they were to develop their property at the bottom to the other side of the access area, there's no more parking available for any development in that regard. And then lastly, the gate that's proposed, that's mentioned in the report between the applicant's project and my client's property, obviously impedes ingress and egress because it's going to be a locked gate. So those are just things I think that perhaps we could address if we could put this on the Planning Commission's agenda for another date after giving the parties some time to talk about it. That's all I have. Thank you. And I'll fill out a card because you'll never know my name otherwise. Thank you very much.
What's that?
Recommend that the rest of the public.
Yeah, let's have the rest of the public come up first, please. Anybody else in the public like to come up and say anything on this matter? Seeing none,
Pedro Castillo, 7 Winding Way, Watsonville. I didn't come here to support or be against the project, but I think the project is premature until the lawyers get together. Potentially there's going to be some lawsuits. I think you have to postpone this, to approve it, and potential for lawsuits. I think the staff just ran this thing through without dealing with this issue. Thank you very much.
thank you. Step on up.
My name is Gerald Fisher. I'm one of the owners of the adjacent parcel. There are a couple of concerns that have not been mentioned yet. One, I will just say in terms of this agreement where there are references to this adjustment, that adjustment, this change, that this says very clearly in Article 13 that it's the entire agreement, that any changes that have to be made are made in writing. So much of this conversation is about something completely unrelated to the written document. I have a concern about the fact that the applicant is putting a sidewalk through our property to access Freedom Boulevard, that it is a place where someone might back up in one of my parking spaces and hit the person in the crosswalk. There's talk about a bus station. I'm not sure where that's going to be located, but it appears that they may be planning to put it on property that we own. The reference made to the lower parking space and access is, were we to build a building on that site, we would be impacted. But in fact, if we took the existing building and went to a different use, we would be significantly impacted. It was once a restaurant. Were we to go back to the restaurant, we would have a different set of parking requirements. So this is in effect a taking of our property, or at least its potential for other development. So I think the issues here are far beyond what's initially been discussed. If were this to be approved as presented, you've taken from us the ability to fully develop our parcel, to make changes to our parcel, and it's not consistent with the agreement as written. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I do have one quick question for you, Jerry. Where's your garbage can located on your property?
Ours is back in the upper corner. You see a little square right there.
Right there? Okay.
And the fact that that's another point, the fact that we'd be asked to look at our neighbor's trash is a bit offensive, and that we'd be asked to put his structure on our property is very offensive. Thank you for asking that question, though.
This is a public hearing. Anybody else from the public would like to come up to say anything? Seeing none, I close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion.
I would have liked it if the applicant would have answered a couple of the questions posed by the attorney, if he would like.
Yep.
I'll answer a few just because of where this may or may not go. As opposed to the gate, I think the gate was actually something that was on the previous plan that was approved in 2004. I don't think our plan actually calls for the gate to run across there, as the missus had said. So I don't think our plan I know did not ask for the gate to be on there with regards to that. Again, the easement issue, I mean, all we're asking for today is just for you to approve it, to go to the council. Again, there's more issues than what the easement agreement, whether the interpretation of it between what I have, what they sold me and what they told me I had, to what they're interpreting it now. And it's conditioned already as item 14 on there. Going and starting over, I mean, I've already spent a lot of time and energy to get it here. It's a condition on there, so all this work that I'm putting in and the time and energy that I have put in and the cost that it's taken, it's something that I don't take lightly, and is an enormous amount of expense that I have incurred already. To table this until me and my neighbors resolve something, it's already a condition of the agreement and of the approval. I'm hoping that I do come to an agreement with them. I mean, it's surprising that this is even an issue, considered the history that both of us have together and with the property. I mean, again, they sold it to me and they bought it from me. And all this happened after the approval from 2004 of a residential 22-unit development that had no two-car garages, that was tandem parking. It was going to be a higher density project. That issue is an issue, and it's a valid concern, and I appreciate their concern as well, but I don't think starting over and allowing us time to come to an amicable agreement will really do anybody any good, because it's already a condition that we have. The condition's there. It has to be an agreement. If we don't come to an agreement, then all this is really I mean, it's great to see you guys all, but it would be a waste of time for anybody anyways. I think I have like 70 other conditions that I have to meet. The item 14 that Keith mentions is one of many other conditions that we have. And the fact that we have no neighbors other than my adjacent neighbors who have this issue, and nobody from the public against this project. And I'm not breaking ground tomorrow. I mean, it's still a long process that it has to go, and all we're asking is your recommendation to the council to approve it with the condition that me and the neighbors come to an agreement. If you guys have all heard, the only issue that has come up is the agreement with me and the neighbors. That's already a condition of this approval that I have to try and get from the neighbors. Tabling it and bringing it back for that issue when it's already a condition, it would just prolong this even longer. And development does take a long time, and it is very costly. And then timing is of the essence. I mean, we are in a good market now. I do want to keep this project moving. Who knows what the project will be in a couple years, where the market has been. We've gone through a down market already. We saw what that did to the market. So I strongly would ask for you guys to approve it as staff presented it. There's a condition for this issue that whether it is or isn't an issue, there's a condition for it to be addressed and clarified. I mean, it's not, I don't think that particular issue is an issue for the planning commissioner to be done publicly. I think that's an issue more of a private matter between private property owners.
I just want to ask one question. So on that easement, and this is kind of a dumb question, but I do understand their point about putting the garbage, which literally is on their property. Are you saying that that easement that you have would allow you to put a trash container on their property?
In the easement agreement, it actually specifically states for, garbage and trash enclosures. So it does do that. And just remember, the easement was created, I'm just guessing, because neither one of us owned the property when it was done in 2001. But in 2001, it was established between the property owners, who neither of them own them now. I think one member still owns, which is not the parties that are here. But it was done with the intention of a residential development, because in 2002, they started developing this for a residential townhome subdivision. And it was a 22-unit townhome subdivision, which was it was a higher density unit. Parking was completely different. Again, no standard two-car garages, there were tandem garages. My interpretation of the easement is that it was intended for the development of the back parcel, and that's what we're proposing to do.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Any other planning commissioners have any questions?
Just a point of clarification. I can show you the map of the previous project that did show a parking easement and access easement designated in the general areas that Mr. Farhad is proposing. So this map clearly shows what was approved back in 2004. I can present it to you if you're interested.
Yes.
Yeah, Keith, I'd like clarification on something. This easement issue, one way or the other, isn't something that's going to be settled in this chamber by this body or by the city council. The issue with the easement is going to have to be settled by the two parties, the two owners of the parcels, right?
That's correct. It's a private matter. The condition was put there to recognize for the party applicant that he does have to have that formal agreement before, at this stage, I would recommend before a building permit is issued on the project, if it got approved, that we would have that in writing, because I don't want them to move forward with something that it can't perform. But
neither do I.
Thank you.
So is that on condition 14 already, or do we need?
No,
to add
I would
that?
recommend adding prior to issuance of a building permit to condition 14.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that, because I don't want to build something, incur the cost for something that I may not have, theoretically. So I'm okay with that amendment if that satisfies staff's.
So right now, just to clarify, we have 2 recommendations for the city council.
Correct. There's one in regards to the use permit and the negative declaration, and the second is the tentative map. If you were to make a motion, you should do the first one with the use permit and the negative deck, and then the tentative map, and the tentative map would have the modification to the condition. And if you're interested in seeing this map, I'll show it to you. There is some history based on the project that was previously approved.
Right now, it's at, yes.
Oh, well, I mean, the plan looks like it's a good plan, and I hope that you guys are able to work out this easement issue, because that neighborhood could really use a little this kind of attention. So I hope that you're all able to work it out, no matter which way this goes right now. So.
this was the area for parking, and these were the.
And this was all agreed to at the time?
This was the
No,
approved.
this is the only
tentative.
place it wasn't agreed upon for the garbage, this,
This was parking and trash enclosure.
oh, parking and trash
Trash
enclosure. Currently have the trash enclosure. That,
That project.
they can actually put their trash enclosure in that easement.
They need to figure this, but in regards.
Well, it was understood in 2001.
In 2001.
I got you. Makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Thank you.
The previous, and to record it, this is. And that was a.
Mm-hmm. 22 years.
Okay, so we're at the commission, if they want, anybody wants to make a recommendation for the first one or not.
I just had one additional question for staff, but I'll let Keith and Susie then be on the same page, so to speak. Do you have any observations, Susie, about the location of the affordable units?
Maybe we should wait.
Wait for Keith.
Yeah.
For Keith, and, okay. They're sort of right across from each other. They're all the same.
I think the outsides are the same. I don't know if the insides are the same.
I think so. I think they're all built to the same standard, same.
All three look the same. You wouldn't be able to
But- oh,
tell which
you're
ones they
right.
are, but they're
I've
actually
been-
physically different.
Yeah, I've been in each one of them. What's that?
Yeah, three
Yeah, they're all-
bedrooms, 2.5
like
beds,
first- I don't know if
1,300
they'd even
and
put a
something
bathroom
square feet.
downstairs.
Yeah.
So with condition 14, if they don't get that agreement worked out,
Which
it's,
units?
this just goes away?
Pine tar.
There would be no building permit issued.
Okay. Yes, Toby?
Yes, Keith and Susie, I was wondering if you had any observations or comment about the location of the affordable units.
I don't have any issues with them. It's up to the applicant. There's two required, there's 15%. You know, they're the same unit type. There is no differentiation between them. And I wouldn't, they've got two, they're not next to each other, they're equally distributed. I think it meets the requirements as it's proposed.
Okay, thank you.
I want to make a motion to approve the, well, to go ahead with staff's recommendation, but to add that the building permit will come at. That's confusing to me, the three separate motions we have
Just
to
two,
make.
just two is
Just
necessary,
two,
because you have two resolutions, one, it got written unfortunately, but the way that the resolution is that the environmental and the use permit are in the same resolution, and the tentative map is separate, so there's just two actions necessary. And the modification would be to the tentative map, and this is just a recommendation to council. You're not taking final action. I would recommend also that you request the applicant to talk to the adjacent property owner and come to some general understanding before we move this forward to city council.
Isn't that already part of one of the conditions that they communicate and?
Yeah, I mean, it is, but in regards to timing wise, I think it would be useful for Mr. Farhat's attorney and their attorney to at least talk before I schedule this to Planning Commission. I would like to hear some direction. I mean, I have a previous map, but that doesn't necessarily mean that is the same. So there needs to be an agreement between the two, a general understanding, and I think, again, it's a private issue between property owners, and I think they both understand that. So, and I think if this issue is still there when it comes to council, they're going to have a much more difficult time.
That makes sense to me. What I want to say is my knowledge about how time-consuming these processes can be makes me want to go ahead and push it a step forward, very much highlighting the fact that the main condition we've been talking about, 14, is going to ensure that they come to a place where the final project can move forward. So it's going to be hard for me to verbalize the motion there. I'm going to try and verbalize the motion the way I was trying to say the first time. So I make a motion to go with staff's recommendation to, I'm going to have to read it from the way you wrote it.
Basically, staff recommendation would be to recommend to the city council the use permit and the negative declaration with design review, and second, to recommend the tentative map with condition 14 modified.
Correct.
To indicate that you would require the building permit, that the agreement has to be recorded before the building permit is issued.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Do I have a first and second? Can I get roll call, please?
Dana,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Hammer,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Gomez Contreras.
Yes.
Corley.
Yes. The recommendation to city council passed. Public 5.1, a public hearing to consider the recommendation to city council on applicant PP 2014-221 for modification to the alcohol-related use chapter 14-25 of the Watsonville Municipal Code to provide an exception to the separation requirements for service stations with convenience stores that exceed 1,000 square feet to obtain use permits for the sale of beer and wine type 20 off-sale alcohol license in areas of overconcentration if existing license in the overconcentration census tract is obtained, filed by Ron Inc. of American Fuels applicant. Staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair Corley, members of the commission. You've indicated basically what we're going to be considering tonight. I'll give you a little brief background of the alcohol ordinance that was adopted in 2002. This document was adopted with the understanding that there were some significant issues with alcohol sales in the community, and that ways to try and reduce overconcentration in the number of outlets was something that needed to have focus. And that was what generated the review in the alcohol ordinance as it was adopted in 2002. It was adopted with strict separation requirements for a variety of alcohol types, including the type 20 license, which is being discussed tonight. It's a off-sale license in regards to also bars and other things we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in regards to what's the separation. But it's been an effective tool to try and help reduce overconcentration in the city. Since 2002, there's been about a reduction of 7 licenses overall in the city. So it has not gone up. which that's a good thing, and it has gone down a little bit. What's being requested tonight is an amendment to the separation requirements approved for service stations and convenience stores by a city council ordinance in April of 2010. So this is not a new issue. It was actually reviewed and approved back in 2010 for the Union 76 station on East Lake. The amendment that was approved before was to establish that separation requirements would not be required for gas stations and convenience stores that were not located in high crime areas or in over-concentrated areas. So, and then the convenience store had to be over 1,000 square feet. When it came down to it, it really only applied to one property in the city. And so that amendment was approved, and the use permit moved forward for that property on the 76 gas station on East Lake after the amendment was approved. That project did not comply with the ordinance, as the same with Mr. Entz. To give you an idea, currently there are 17 gas stations in the city, 14 of which have convenience stores. 12 of those already have Type 20 off-sale licenses, which is being considered in tonight's presentation. The proposed text amendment would allow, would have little impact on other types of businesses, other convenience stores, because again, it's very specific to only gas stations with convenience stores that are over 1,000 square feet. The text is already in the language. I included the existing alcohol ordinance as it's written, so you could kind of see where that exception is currently. And what's being proposed is a minor tweaking of that language. Without the text amendment that's being proposed tonight, this project would not meet the separation requirement. So it's needed for him to make the application for the use permit. And the difference, he's tried this 2 times before. The difference between this and the previous applications is he requested a use permit application, and the use permit application without this text amendment is not consistent with the ordinance. So the difference today is that he's asking for the text amendment, which would change the regulations for this specific item related to gas stations with convenience stores. And then if it got approved, it would allow him to apply for the use permit at a later date. So that's the big difference between this application and the previous 2 applications that he brought forward. This is a map showing the 17 gas stations and showing which ones have Type 20 licenses. So tonight's application, Mr. Entz has requested as is allowed by ordinance, he's submitted a private request to modify the previous text amendment to allow gas stations to be considered in over-concentrated areas if a permit is obtained in the same census tract. So previously, the exemption didn't allow it to be considered in an area of over-concentration. This amendment is allowing a relocation of an existing business inside an existing census tract. So therefore, it wouldn't increase or make a difference in the overconcentration. It would stay the same, basically. So since this was last considered, the crime has gone down in this area. The card room has closed. So 175 Main Street is no longer in a high crime area, which is another big difference between this time and the other time. So if the amendment is approved, separation requirements would not apply, but the standard for a letter of convenience and necessity would still be required because it would still be in an area of overconcentration. The chief of police is here to talk about that in a little bit more detail, but we do recognize that the transfer of the existing permit from Lot Tiendita, which is close to the high school, close to Lynn Scott School. Both of those are sensitive use areas that permit would not meet the current alcohol requirements. And moving that inside the same census tract to an area that has sophisticated safety equipment already in place does make sense and would improve safety in the community. This is a map of Mr. Entz's property, American Fuels. This gives you the existing high crime areas as they're mapped by the police department. As you can see, the high crime kind of surrounds Mr. Entz's area, but it is now outside. This is the Lattanzio site that is being considered for the transfer. The existing separation requirements that are in the ordinance, these are the standards that currently would have prevented an SUP from being put in Mr. Entz's property. The exemption would basically, for this project, the separation requirements would no longer be in effect. Therefore, he could apply for the use permit. This is the overconcentration map in regards to transferring it within existing census tract. Right now, there are nine type 20 licenses in tract 1103, in which the ABC allows 7. So it still is overconcentrated, but transferring it from here to here will not increase the overconcentration, but will improve safety. So this is what's being proposed, transferring from Lattanzio to American Fuels. So the text amendment as it's proposed is very restrictive in regards to its implementation. We don't want to open up the alcohol ordinance to everybody being able to get a permit. We understand the importance of overconcentration and how it's impacted the community. One of the areas that we were concerned about, the ARCO AMPM at 298 Green Valley, the new gas station that was built there, that is directly adjacent to a charter school. It's less than 300 feet. Therefore, the separation requirements, even if this was adopted, would still apply to that particular business. And they were informed when they purchased that they could not get an alcohol permit. So again, this amendment is very limited in scope. It's consistent with a modification to the ordinance that's already been approved. It's only to gas stations with 1,000 square feet. This shows you the map of Y298 Green Valley. This is the charter school. This is the buffer requirement. It's right in the middle. So this would not be someplace that could apply for an application. The separation requirements would still, of the 2 that currently have convenience stores, this is the only other one that has a convenience store. The rest of them would have to build convenience stores to make an application. So the letter of convenience and necessity, I'll let the chief of police talk about.
Good evening, Commissioners. Manny Solano with the Police Department. Pleasure to come before you to, first of all, let you know, and I know, I hope you know, that we believe and we practice in not only dealing with alcohol licenses, but also in the education and prevention of the abuse of all dangerous substances, alcohol being one of them possibly when it's misused. So with that said, we are very thoughtful, we're very cautious in how we go about application of alcohol laws and policy, to the extent that I know even some of our prevention partners are here tonight. You may hear from some of them. We engage the community, we engage with our partners, but again, at the same time, we want to be thoughtful and mindful and considerate of businesses. In this case, with this particular applicant, time has actually been in our favor. Since last time we came before you, I know many of you weren't here. However, 5 years has actually done some good in allowing us, the police department, to work with this particular applicant and others in this business district to lower crime. It's a significant lowering, but we'd love to see some more. I think with passage of Measure G, I can tell you that we will begin to add more officers. We are already doing that. We're training a lot of them, so it takes time. But one of our primary goals is, when we do get up to staff, is to have a police officer assigned to the walking beat downtown, specifically in the area you're hearing about here, this particular the high crime area that's adjacent to the business. So with that said, the police department, in addition to feeling much more now better at giving the approval of the letter, which I'll talk a little bit about here. I also want to mention too, though, that the closing of a bar across the street, a problematic card room, just the clientele and the visitors that we're beginning to see in this particular area is a much better scenario than we were looking at 5 years ago. And then 2 years ago, as you heard Keith mention, this applicant came to us in 2002, I believe, and was denied as well. So with that said, we support staff's recommendation. With that, and when given the approval to move forward, I would then write a letter of convenience and necessity, which really talks about if the business is proposed, does it fit the goals of the city? Does the proposed establishment pose a law enforcement or public health problem, or does it alleviate blight and crime? And I can say safely at this point that the recommendation I would have would be to, again, support staff's recommendation.
So with this, the Planning Commission, again, this is a text amendment. It's an ordinance modification. The Planning Commission makes recommendations to the City Council. You are not the final action body. If this text amendment was approved, then the applicant could submit a special use permit application, which would come back to the Planning Commission with final authority to approve that, only if the text amendment is approved. So although the separation requirements currently apply to the business, the proposed text amendment would allow the relocation of a permit from the same census tract next to a sensitive use area, which are the schools, to an area that has better safety equipment and better training. And the proposed amendment would clarify when gas stations with convenience stores qualify for an exemption from the separation requirement, allow the proposed facility to move forward with an SUP application, would not open up the alcohol ordinance to other people making similar requests. This is a fairly focused amendment. It's why we're recommending approval to it, and this has already been done once. And so it's just a minor tweak to the existing modification that was already approved by council in 2010. So therefore, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution recommending approval of the text amendment to the council based on the findings that are in your staff report. Concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any of the planning commissioners have questions of staff or Police Chief Solano?
Yeah,
Yes.
I do. Again, I think you pretty much reiterate this. It's just a text amendment that it's the recommendation. It's not
That's correct.
The use permit.
Not a use permit tonight.
And this amendment to the text would open up the door to any other gas station, convenience store with 1,000 square feet that's either that one or built new.
Right.
In this
As we indicated, there's
But within the city limits of Watsonville, any
only
gas
this,
station with a convenience store that's built
Right.
would be under this amendment.
correct.
that
Although
understanding?
there's 17 businesses, gas stations, 14 of them have convenience stores.
Yeah,
12 of them already.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, if another gas station, another gas convenience store station opened up within the city limits of Watsonville, they would fall under this.
They would
text
have to
amendment,
follow the separation requirements.
and the separation requirement.
Yes.
They would fall under this text amendment.
Yes.
Yes.
So this obviously has your recommendation, Keith, but does that also come along with Watsonville PD, Chief Solano? You're supportive of the motion before us?
Yes, and for the reasons stated. Again, the moving the license is not adding a new license. It's moving it to an area that's much better to a more responsible business owner.
Yeah, well, and crimes down in this area. This is at the tail end of Main Street and Riverside, right?
Yes, yes, we are seeing again a slow decrease as the years have been passing here, and again we feel much more comfortable now supporting it. Again, last 2 times we denied it.
Thank you.
So I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So his issue is the proximity to the store behind him and the fact that they sell alcohol, or is his problem the fact that he was in an over-concentrated area to begin with?
The ordinance, he ran into the issue of the Don Rafa is the one is a convenience store that has a Type 20 license. And then there's also the other El Pueblo Market, which is on the other side of Union Street. They're also within 5. So those two businesses would have prevented Ron, and that's why when he applied for a special use permit without any change, the ordinance wouldn't allow it. So at this stage, he is making a request to modify the text to allow him to not have the separation apply to 1,000-foot, gas stations with 1,000-foot convenience stores.
Help me with this then. So what was the difference then between his application and the application that was approved over at the 76 station next to Barcy's Liquor? Is it because he was in an area oversaturated to begin with? Or?
No, the difference between this application and that application, the 76 station established the exemption for areas that were not in high crime areas or not in over-concentration areas.
Okay.
And in that case, the only thing that applied was the 76 station.
Gotcha.
That was it. Okay. That was the only, and it didn't, it's been 5 years. It has not made any significant opening up of the alcohol ordinance. And this has been crafted in a way that this also will only apply to a very limited opportunity.
So Manny, you don't consider this the high crime area it was when that exemption for the 76 station was done? Things have changed. That's the difference tonight?
Things have changed, and as we had discussed and requested 5 years ago, we wanted more time to work with the owner, this applicant, and also to allow us to have focused more patrol, extra attention, monitor the calls for service, and then really take a look at if we could better things. And then, as I mentioned, with the closing of the bars across the street, the card room, things have gotten better to the point now where crime has lessened and we are much more comfortable.
McDonald's coming in now, too, across the street, right?
Right, right.
All right.
Yes. Again, two issues still exist here. Overconcentration, and within that convenience of the two stores, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the state,
the other thing is, we're not really looking at the use permit, which you guys keep talking about, the use permit. We're actually talking about the text amendment, which actually would then amend the ordinance, the alcohol ordinance, creating again any new gas station or convenience store gas station that opens within the city limits of Watsonville would fall under this. Even if it's in a high concentrated area, even though it's in a high crime area, a new gas station with a convenience store would be able to apply.
This modification does not apply to areas that are in high crime areas. That would still prevent somebody.
No, high concentration.
High concentration,
and the distance between two
again,
stores.
they would have to find a license within that existing area that's over-concentrated and transfer it.
Yeah, and
So
now the issue of high concentration license, this is not going to reduce the amount of licenses or the high concentration. It's going to maintain it the same. So we're really not moving forward nor backwards with this.
That's
And
correct.
I think the city council, and when they established this ordinance, was to try to, and the police was to clean up this area and reduce the concentration of alcohol licenses. Correct?
There were two efforts, yeah. The reduction in the number of licenses, which we have achieved, but also to improve safety.
But the reduction hasn't met the state of California's requirements of 7.
No, the standard is 7 and there's 9.
We're still up by 2, right?
They're up by
So
2.
we still got to actually look at, as a city, we have to look at reducing 2 licenses within this geographical area of the city.
To meet the state guidelines, that would be a correct statement.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Anna.
A couple of questions. Going back to the map that's the high crime area map, is it possible to see more of that area going along, up along Union Street and that, just to get an idea of how large that high crime area is?
I didn't bring the map with me
Or is it
today.
just, what we have?
Um,
Like, how extensive is it up to the left side of that map? Ours doesn't show, I mean, ours shows what yours shows.
And to complement that, am I to be concerned because that map shows that this is centered on the post office, this building, and the police department?
No, the police aren't,
Well, yeah.
I have a bigger map that does show it all, but I don't have it with me, so
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So is this new license going in closer to the police station? I mean, is that one?
That's correct.
I've kind of, I read
Again,
that. I thought I read that.
On this map, this is the Lattanzio. This is where the license currently is. 175 Main is where it would be proposed. This is the police station right here.
Okay. I guess, and the other question, kind of going on what Aurelio was saying, so there is an overconcentration of licenses in this area. Is it possible, I mean, what are the possibilities of going from 9 to 2? 9 licenses to 2 licenses, and then I guess the other question.
It would be 7.
Or 7.
Seven
sorry.
would be.
Going down 2, sorry. that's
Going
what I
down
meant.
2.
Yeah, down 2.
You know, again, it's kind of the private properties, people own licenses. The city doesn't really get into, we can regulate things, but we can't really cause things to drop below unless we have significant issues. Everybody has a use permit. If it's determined that there is a public nuisance, then we can move forward with revocation of permits. We have done it, but again, it's a difficult process and not one taken lightly by any of us because it's private, affects private property and the owners, et cetera. I mean, it's something that we have done, but we do it hesitantly.
Is that what's happening in this instance?
No.
Okay.
No, it's a deal between the owner of the Lattanzio and Mr. Ince, and Mr. Ince is here. He can explain that process, but it's not being generated by the city. It's a deal between private property owners.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions, staff or the police chief? Could you just run through real quick where those licenses are located in this area?
Yes.
And are
What,
any
yeah,
of
the
them,
names of the businesses and addresses?
please, and is any of them inactive? They still have an active license, but they do not have a business.
We checked today with ABC, and these are the active licenses we currently have in this census tract. So this is considered Census Tract 1103. The first one is Bridge Street Grocery and Liquor. That's at 338 East Riverside Drive. I'm not sure if we can blow this up or not, but he'll point to it the best he can here. La Tiendita, Esperanza Market, is 159 Riverside, which we're talking about. 7-Eleven is also in this district. That's the 261 East Lake Avenue 7-Eleven. There's also a license at the Pajaro Valley Fish Market. It's one of those you don't think of, but it's that little market actually across from the back gate of the police department. That's 114 Union Street. Don Rafa's Market is at 50 West Riverside Drive. J&D Market is also in the census. It's at 226 Riverside. And then CVS also has an off-sale license. That's at Rodriguez Street, 490 Rodriguez Street. Then Santa Fe Market also has an off-sale. That's located at 133 East Lake Avenue. And then the last one is El Pueblo Food. That's at 100 Union Street at the corner of Union and Riverside. So let me just point out, this is a big census tract. It runs almost to Lincoln, all the way to almost Walker Street, west, and then south all the way to the levee, and then north all the way to the plaza. So it's far-reaching. It's a pretty wide district, just to give you the scope of what we're talking about here.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Seeing none, would the applicant like to come up and say a few things?
Good evening. A lot's already been said on the subject. I guess the most important thing that I would ask any member is, if you're concerned about improving the community, go into Lattanzio Market, buy yourself a pack of gum. Please take your children or your grandchild with you, and then come to my facility and you determine where you want the liquor license in the community. I'm not asking for a new liquor license. I've operated this business in our community for 15 years. Been in Rotary, been an outstanding community member, been patient, worked with Manny many times, and this is the same license I had purchased from the seller, not closed the deal, but put it in escrow. We weren't able to transfer it last time. About 8-9 months ago, we started working together again, so maybe there is light, and that was after we got the recent crime statistics had went down, so I went back to the owner of La Tienda and was able to acquire the license, and it's in escrow one more time. I can't do anything with it unless we make this small text amendment change, which won't open. We're not asking to change all the liquor ordinance. A very small, limited amount of words we want to change.
Thank you.
Not a new license. I want to move an existing license to a much better location, a location where we have 32 cameras that open 24 hours a day. We know everything that happens on our lot. We've helped many times with the police department stop credit card fraud. We have the latest credit card fraud technology in the community in our station. I don't like crime, but I need an alcohol license to stay competitive in our community. We're down almost 25% over the last 2 years. When people go camping in our society, or to the beach, to the races, to Monterey the race, wherever, the last things they get, you fill up your vehicle, you get beer and ice. When people come to my station and they say, why don't you have beer? Am I forced in saying we're in a high crime area? I mean, you know, how do I respond to those customers? I don't respond to them very often, unfortunately, any longer, because I've lost lots of them. If you go to a convenience store in the state of California, you're going to see type 20 license 99% of the time now. Questions I can answer?
I have one. If you did happen to get this use permit, how would you ensure that underage people would not purchase anything?
A number of things. Technology really helps. We have multiple verification technologies. We just don't look at a license. We don't look at a passport. If it doesn't slide through our terminal, we don't take it, whether it's for tobacco, and it would be the same for alcohol. We also, it's the policy of my station that before anybody's allowed to work on a register, they have to go through currently the training to sell tobacco that's provided through We Care. There's multiple training programs for selling alcohol, and all of those would be implemented.
Thank you. Anybody on the commission have any questions of the applicant?
Again, I just want to make sure that we understand this. We're just doing a text amendment. We're not, we shouldn't even be talking about a use liquor license or how he's going to go about, because he's going to have to come back to us.
Yes.
When he
That's
applies
correct.
for that.
Yes.
We have to look at the text amendment and what we're going to be doing here when we make this amendment, if this amendment's approved. And that is, we are going to allow any new gas station with a convenience store in a high concentrated area apply for a liquor license or a class 20 license. That's what it's about. It's not about the business owner right now applying for the use of a liquor license, but it's about us making that amendment change.
Yeah, but I don't think it's regarding new establishments, correct?
It could apply, again, there's 17 existing ones. If there was 14 that have offset, well, 14 that have convenience stores, 12 of them have off sale.
And
So
then
the other 5 could build them and apply.
But then they'd have to get existing license out of the
Right.
same area.
Yes.
That they are same tract, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we understand that that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at him applying for usage of.
No, he is not, this, again,
He just wants to make that text amendment.
Yeah.
And
in order for him to make the application, a text amendment would have to be approved. So that's what's being considered tonight.
yeah. And that's what I'm trying to just make sure that we understand and not the businessman's position right now. And I understand his position, but as a council, what we need to be looking at in the big picture.
And again, in the big picture, I would ask you politely to go into La Tienda Market, take your grandchild or your child with you, come to my business, and you determine what's better for the community, where the license would be better. And I understand it's not about me, but I think that's a very key issue, and I know that's one that the police department's looked at thoroughly, is that license is in effect. And it's right next door to a school, right next door to a school.
This is a public hearing. Anybody from the public like to come up and address this?
Evening. Chair, Corley, members of the commission, city staff, community members and colleagues. My name is Gina Cole, and I'm here representing Pajaro Valley Prevention and Student Assistance. For the over 2 decades, PVPSA, in collaboration with a multitude of partners and community members, has worked with city personnel and planning commissioners to ensure the health and safety of our community. We have worked with you particularly to ensure that the youth of our community are protected by the laws that you pass and approve, or approve and pass. It's been our history, as it relates to alcohol access issues, and we have appreciated the willing collaboration conversations that we've held over the years. Through these conversations with the city staff, we have brought forth policy recommendations that keep the health and safety of our community at the forefront. So PVPSA is very proud of our collective efforts, and this is why it's difficult for us to be here once again, with the need to remind ourselves that the health and safety of our community should never be compromised. Unfortunately, we know firsthand that tragedies come about when access to alcohol is expanded. And I know we're not talking about expanding it, but we're expanding the area where it would be accessed. We also know that driving and drinking have a negative impact on so many. Many of the conversations we've held with the city, we don't understand staff's recommendation to allow gas stations, places where people go and fuel their cars, to be permitted to sell alcohol. This is an accident waiting to happen. While we appreciate the intended outcome of facilitating the economic mobility here, this is simply not the best way to achieve economic growth. However, we do understand this is not a simple issue, and we understand that further analysis and conversation must take place. In the spirit of our past collaborative history, we are asking you, the Planning Commission, to direct staff to convene more meetings with prevention partners such as PVPSA to further deliberate and discuss this recommendation. Our goal would be to bring forth a resolution to the matter that makes sense for all of those involved without sacrificing or compromising the health and safety of our community. Please direct staff to hold these conversations before adopting a resolution to approve any modifications. Again, it's the health and safety of our community and especially our youth that are at stake. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chair Corley and members of the Planning Commission and staff. My name's Eddie Robles. I have been actively involved with Friday Night Live for the past 4 years. working in the community, and reducing youth access to alcohol. I have interviewed most of the off-sale alcohol outlets in Watsonville about their compliance with the law and have gotten to honor them through the Responsible Alcohol Merchant Awards. My FNL chapter spent the past 2 years working with the police department to educate alcohol merchants about the city's sign ordinance that no more than 20% of the windows could be covered in advertising. When we started the project, 17 merchants were in violation, and at the end of the project, we had 100% of voluntary compliance with the law. I have spoken at Youth City Council and City Council about the high number of alcohol outlets in Watsonville and the data that shows a direct link between alcohol outlet density and violence. Community Prevention Partners and Friday Night Live have been working hard the past 2 years to collect data, gather input from the community through focus groups and surveys, and have identified several components that will enhance the alcohol ordinance and increase community safety. I urge you to direct the staff to work with community prevention partners to review the entire alcohol ordinance instead of making ordinance modifications on a case-by-case basis. Working together, we can add to the ordinance, address community member concerns, and provide the city leaders with more local control and law enforcement with the tools they need to keep our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Chair Corley, members of the commission, city staff, and community members, my name is Paula Toledo, and I work at Pajaro Valley Prevention along with Gina. As my colleague has stated, PVPSA has a long history of collaboration with many community members and prevention program partners, including the city of Watsonville. And we all share in the concern that our youth in particular are protected. An important concern that PVPSA and the community prevention partners share is the connection between alcohol and youth violence. There is both national and local data that shows direct links between the number of alcohol outlets and violence. Information from the Watsonville PD shows that areas which have higher concentration of outlets have a higher rate of crime. The associated costs of youth violence and youth accidents are estimated to be upwards of $1,000 per year per youth. Data from the California Healthy Kids Survey also shows a notable drop in recent years in the number of 9th and 11th graders who reported having used alcohol and binged on alcohol in the past 30 days. We urge the Planning Commission to direct staff to meet the community prevention partners to continue this discussion so that we can make sure that these numbers do not continue to go up, that do not go up. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Anybody else like to come up and say anything?
Yeah, hello, my name is David Jones. I own a gas station over closer to Santa Cruz, and I just thought I'd like to point out a few things if I could. One is he wants to sell beer as a packaged item. It's not consumed on the property. It doesn't have anything to do with consuming it on the property. It's just to go. Number two, if you force a customer to get gas at one station and then drive to a liquor store to get their beer, they're on the road twice as long. So there's almost an advantage of having it available at one stop as far as the way people drive. Obviously, this is packaged and you hope that there's not a problem like that. But I mean, it does cut down on the amount of time a person would spend on the road. They have it next door. I find it hard as a retailer to say someone else can have something and I can't. I think we should all be able to compete, and it makes a big difference. When he gets it, and when I got mine like 15 years ago, he's not going to sell a bunch of beer. He's going to sell a bunch of cigarettes, potato chips, other sundry items like that. They go together. And again, it's the one stop. They get their gasoline, they get their beer, They get their cigarettes, they get their chips, they get on their car, and they go camping or whatever they might do. Competitors have advantage against him right now because they have that extra income from the chips and the et cetera that the beer promotes. He's only trying to transfer it or trying to, make it for his transfer. It's not, as you already said, it's not increasing the number of licenses in the city. That should be another issue, in my opinion. I just believe it's unfair to deprive him of being able to compete with his competitors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Cristina Negrete. Yo vivo aquí en Watsonville y yo he trabajado en la agencia Youth Service, Servicio para Jóvenes, que actualmente es Encompass, en la prevención de alcohol y drogas junto con padres de familia. Y hemos trabajado juntos para crear soluciones positivas y para reducir el acceso del alcohol, principalmente en los jóvenes, y mejorar la salud y el bienestar de nuestra comunidad. Ahora tenemos la oportunidad para reunirnos y trabajar juntos en este asunto tan importante. Pedimos a la comisión que dirija al personal que trabaje con CPC, que es el proyecto CURS, para revisar la ordenanza de alcohol e incorporar las bolsas eficaces que beneficien la salud y seguridad de nuestra comunidad. Muchas gracias y es un placer estar con todos ustedes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Cristina Negrete. I live here in Watsonville, and I have worked for the agency Youth Services, now in Compass, in the prevention of alcohol and drugs, and I've been working with parents. And we have worked together to create or to have positive solutions to reduce access to alcohol, mainly with youth, and also to better to improve our community. But now we have the opportunity to get together, to work together in this very important issue. And so we ask you, the commission, to direct the staff to work with CPC, the COURS project, so that we could review the alcohol ordinance and to come up with specific policies to better the health and safety of our community. So thank you very much, and it's a real pleasure to be before you tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I urge you to vote no on the staff recommendation to revise the alcohol ordinance. 4 of you voted no in 2011, and you're still sitting up there. And I hope you do so once again. This proposal is merely an end run on the alcohol ordinance, and there are just too many alcohol outlets in this community. Alcohol consumption is a serious problem in Watsonville, especially among young people. This change would clearly open the gates to others. First, Eastlake, which was very controversial. Now Main Street. Where next? In 2002, the Watsonville City Council adopted the alcohol ordinance, or the Watsonville Municipal Code. This included members of the Planning Commission, City Council, the police, community organizations, and they came together because they were concerned with the issue of alcohol abuse. The ordinance has worked well to regulate businesses and prevent overconcentration of alcohol outlets. According to staff, according to Keith Boyle in your staff presentation, the ordinance has, quote, proven effective in limiting overconcentration. Keith goes on to point, it has also put significant restrictions on new facilities from relocating or obtaining permits to establish new alcohol outlets in town. This is what the alcohol ordinance was intended to do, and it's working. The applicant wants to do an exception, a modification. That's changing the alcohol ordinance to the separation requirements. Separation requirements work and have reduced the number of alcohol sales outlets. We already have too many alcohol outlets in the city of Watsonville. There is an overconcentration of outlets in this area. This area is a high crime rate and is now near a high, if we could see the map once again of the high crime responsibility. This is 2014. The high concentration and the high crime rate. It's right there. It's in red and white stripes. That has not changed. It's still a high crime rate, although the police would tell us otherwise. An exception to the applicant would open the doors to other gas stations to sell beer and wine. This proposal is no different than the one in 2011. More outlets, more consumption, more problems.
Continue, please.
You all get the Sentinel. See the Sentinel headline? The tragedy of Sunday night. 8 young people, alcohol consumption. 4 of them are dead. 4 are in serious trouble medically. So please, say no to gassing up and getting gas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Jenny Sarmiento, 12 Pelican Drive. And I would like to request that you take this opportunity to look at the number of licenses that we have in the community. This is a great opportunity to reduce those licenses by 1 more. Don't allow the transfer of this license to a new location. Regardless of where the license sits, we have a huge community that is impacted on a regular basis by crime, by alcohol, crime-related incidents. I won't repeat what my fellow former commissioner indicated, that there's a lot of incidents where young people are hurt. Not just young people, but also parents, grandparents, the whole community suffers from something like this. If the business cannot function without selling alcohol, that says a lot about our community. We are an alcohol abusing community. It's really an opportunity to reduce those licenses, and I really encourage you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Anybody else from the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back up to the commission for discussion or recommendation. Yes.
I wondered if Manny, you can let us know, when was this area last considered a high crime area? I mean, is it accurate the way that, well, actually, let me let you answer the question.
The area you're speaking of is which area?
Surrounding the The gasoline station, the applicant station.
The area in which we surveyed was both in 2013 and 2014, so that's 2014 data right there.
So it's across the street from the gasoline station?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask one question for Keith? So if we make the text amendment and somebody brings upon the same type of gas station situation, would they have to obtain the license from another vendor in that particular area, or would we be opening the door to increasing the amount of alcohol vendors?
This would require it from another in that census district. So it doesn't increase. It would be, it was a zero-sum game. That's
Zero-sum. So if,
yeah.
somebody wants to do exactly what this gentleman is doing,
He would have to get a license
find a
from
willing
within
partner.
the same census tract of where they're proposing it.
Thank you.
I do have a question for staff. I mean, I heard it multiple times about the planning commission looking at the ordinance. We don't have the authority to look at that ordinance, correct? We have to be.
Yeah, it's the applicant, there's two different processes. There's a city initiated modification to an alcohol ordinance, which we were discussing earlier in the year when we talked about considering an entertainment district. And because of the crime issues that were happening in the city, the council decided it was not the appropriate time to look at an entertainment district, and therefore the concept of fully looking at the alcohol ordinance at the direction of city council has been off the table. The municipal code allows individuals to make proposals for text amendments, as was done in 2010. So this is an individual making a request for a modification. So it doesn't open up the entire ordinance. And so I would recommend that this is a different application. This is not the time to direct full opening up of the alcohol ordinance discussion.
But I guess that's what my question is. The planning commission doesn't have the authority to do
No,
that,
the
right?
city council would have to make that direction.
I just want to make sure that's clear.
That's correct.
A lot of the comments I heard is for the planning commission to
No,
look at it.
it's a city council directive.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the 500-foot buffer zone. The American Fuel gas station, how far is that from Saba School?
From Saba School?
Yeah, it's
Saba
not,
School moved.
Oh, they moved.
It's
Oh,
on
they're not
Riverside.
downtown anymore? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
but
it's
it
much
still would have been way over. The sensitive use area is 300 feet.
Okay.
The old Saba School was probably 1,000 feet away from this.
Okay. And then the just to clarify again, La Tiendita, that license, if this ordinance or this directive, what's it called again?
Text amendment.
The text amendment, if it does not go through, does La Tiendita keep their alcohol license and keep selling alcohol?
Yes.
Even though they're close, they
Yes.
have they're proximate
Yeah, because
to
it's an
schools.
existing condition. It was long before the alcohol ordinance was established. So a new license could not go in that because of its location next to a school.
Okay.
But the alcohol ordinance does not affect existing prior to the adoption of the alcohol ordinance.
Because what I was hearing from the public was a lot of, concern about the youth and alcohol, and again, being on the PIT post-incident team, I know that is a big problem. But
Right.
moving that license away from schools and young people to an area where there's a lot, it's a lot more visible, and to an area where they're not schools around, seems like it would I don't know if it would reduce or not.
Yeah, I mean, again, that part of the issue is a private issue. The existing La Tiendita has a Type 20 license. The city cannot remove it unless it's determined that there is a significant public nuisance associated with it, and it would have to come back to Planning Commission, a long, drawn-out process. This is what's being proposed is a private ability that there's an agreement between two private property owners to transfer a license. This is not being directed by the city. The only thing that is being requested is an amendment that would allow him to consider that transfer and not be subject to separation requirements. Because right now, 175 Main Street has two convenience stores that sell alcohol closer than 500 feet, which that is the previous reason why the two applications that this applicant brought before the Planning Commission were denied. So
that's why the necessity for the text amendment.
yes, that's why he has to have the text amendment, because the existing ordinance would not allow it at this location. So it's been done previously. Previously, we kind of had a different, because we didn't want to open it up, okay? But since it's been opened up, and since this is very limited in regards to how it can be applied, that's why we've changed our position. So we don't feel that this will open up this to a lot of other applications or abilities. It's very expensive to build gas stations. I don't think you're going to see a lot of gas stations other than the ones that you currently have move forward. So, you know, it's a calculated risk, but at this stage, we think that moving, you know, the ability to move this away from an elementary school that in an area that's currently a problematic establishment to one that has good safety, we think outweighs the potential. This doesn't increase the concentration, it maintains the same level. So we just, at this stage, we think that the benefits outweigh the problems.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Yes, Nick.
Yeah, I feel very comforted by Chief Solano and the backing of the police department in moving this forward. You know, I want to see, if someone's going to have this license, I want the holder of it to be responsible, and I feel that Mr. Ince would be a responsible user. I've seen him and read about him, you know, coming before the city multiple times, and I think that if it's going to go someplace, I'd rather have it with Mr. Ince than at Lattanzio, where it's close to a school. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommendation as staff has presented it.
I'm going to go ahead and second that, and I'm going to do it for the same reasons. I know that might be hard to believe, but when I was a young man, I wasn't the best young man, and one of the things I tried to do before I was 21 was obtain alcohol. And I can tell you that Safeway and Long's and places like that never sold it to me. Didn't matter how many outlets there were. But I can tell you almost 30 years later who and what establishments sold me beer. We all knew who they were. We went to those establishments, they looked out the window, they took our ID, and they sold us beer. So I don't think it's a matter of how many outlets you have sometimes. It's a matter of who holds those licenses and how seriously they take that job. And I agree here. I think we have a good establishment that hopes to do a good job with this, and I'm going to give them my trust. And I think in this particular case, we're putting the license, when the license does become available, we are doing just a text amendment. But by doing that, we're going to make this license available to a responsible owner. So I'll second the amendment.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Yes.
Maddie, how often do you get calls from La Tiendita for any reason related to that neighborhood, including the sale of alcohol there?
Well, let me just give you a real recent inspection that we did. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but we do get called, and really we have to really maintain constant vigilance on that particular business, because when we do inspections, in fact, I myself, a little over a year ago, came up on it at night one time to do inspection and saw people drinking right on the steps of the business. And the owner was there. There were cans clearly that had been drank in the garbage can next to the owner. People had urinated inside. Our last inspection, a little over a year ago, we found a gambling machine with hard liquor that's not supposed to be in the business behind the counter. The gambling machine was to be removed. It wasn't removed. On our second inspection, we still found it there again. Our most recent inspection a month ago, it was finally removed. And the hard thing working, just to let you know, administratively with alcohol beverage control, it's really a headache because it takes them a long time to move on things sometimes. So to answer your question, we do get called there, but more so it's our having to go find things wrong. So hope that answers your question.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Oh, and have those times that you have found the business in violation of the, well, maybe are they in violation of the ordinance with the things that you just mentioned?
Yes, they're in violation of, in fact, some of them were even misdemeanors.
So,
So it's beyond the ordinance.
so is there a reason why the city hasn't moved to take away the license? Or is it just not a big enough nuisance?
I think that's the case at this point. We're still documenting, working with CDD, and I think everybody's aware of the problems. And then also, I think that being that we knew that there is a possibility of some potential movement of the license, we're holding out hope that, again, it could be moved to a more responsible area, which would alleviate more work and problems that we're currently seeing.
Thank you.
Can I get roll call, please?
Dana,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
No.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Cammer,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Gomez Contreras,
Yes.
Corley,
Yes.
They haven't been able to close the Tiendita in 30 years. And it's been a problem for 30 years, but they can close the Miramar in less than a
Okay, so
year,
we're gonna
it
change.
kinda goes figures
We're gonna
politically where it's at.
hand it over to
So-
Keith.
So changing hats again, our next item on the agenda is new business and nominations and elections of the chair and the vice chair. It's that time of year. And so I would open up the nomination process for the chair of the Planning Commission.
May I, before we go in that direction?
Sure.
Maybe, I think this is the best time to do it. I wanted to say that this will be my last meeting on the commission.
Okay.
And so it's been a really fun experience, and I've learned a lot serving on the Planning Commission and alongside my peers here. And I hope to return to serve the public in a near future. And I'm raising my daughter, who's going to be 10 months in a week, and so I want to give her all the attention that I can. Having said that, well, and thank you, staff, also for your really hard work and the hours that you put into this. And I'm just prolonging the night for you here. But I wonder if it is, well, I want to put it out there to the commission to wait another month to do nominations for chair and co-chair because of my leaving, if that makes sense.
It may not, you may not get replaced that quickly.
Ah, okay. I thought, okay.
So, you might be delaying it 2 or more months.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Let's move ahead.
Yeah.
Can we act on one position and then keep the other position open?
You could. I'm not sure why, you would want to. It's up to you. So with that, I'll open up the nomination for the chair of the Planning Commissions. Does anybody, Nick?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Rick Dana. I've known Rick for couple of years, and I've gotten to know him, and he's always very polite, very easy to work with, very punctual, and I think that he would be a good addition in a leadership role here.
I second it.
There's been a move and a second. Is there any other nominations that anybody would like to bring up? I'd call for a roll call vote.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Cammer,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Gomez Concheras,
Yes.
Corley.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Chair Dana. I'd turn the meeting over to you for our next item of business, which is nomination of chair, vice chair. Unless you want to continue it.
No, I'll go ahead and open it up for nominations for the vice chair.
I'd like to nominate my roommate here, my seatmate here, to the right, Aurelio, as vice chair of the commission.
I'll second that.
So is there any, okay, go ahead. No, Rick, you would, is there
Oh,
any
it's up
other?
to me? I'll go
Yeah, well,
ahead.
no, is there any other nominations?
Any other
So-
nominations? Nobody? Okay, guess we'll call for a roll call.
Dana,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Jenkins,
Yes.
Don't sound too convincing.
Cammer,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Gomez Concheras.
Yes.
Corley.
Yes.
All right, so congratulations to both the new chair and vice chair of the planning commission. I look forward to working with you. I just did want to, as the director's report, there is on your table and in your packet, there's an opportunity for planning commissioner training on April 24th from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. It sounds like a really good option. The Planning Commission in the past has requested training. We definitely have the ability for budget, so anybody who is interested in signing up, please contact either me or Deborah, and we will sign you up for that training. So also, we have become very busy, and you guys will be getting a number of projects in the next few months. No, we will pay for it.
I do have one question
Yeah.
on the bank, on the corner of East Lake and Tuttle.
Yeah, the city old one, East Lake,
Yeah,
across from
it's-
Hanson's. I haven't seen anything come in on it.
No, I mean, the graffiti.
Ah.
How do we handle that?
Yeah,
Chase Bank.
I can refer it to Rex, who is our graffiti person, but
Okay,
it's,
'cause then I had one more, I think I asked, East Lake, yeah. The auto body shop over on, Beach Street, I think opened up. So I'm not sure if that got a use permit or not.
where?
On Beach Street, right before, what is it, A1 Tool Rentals on the same side of the street?
I'll look into it.
It's auto body shop. And I didn't remember seeing them come in front of the planning commission.
I'll look at it.
My
Thank
car's
you.
there. Don't close them down yet.
Anything,
Just kidding.
anything else from commission? That concludes my director's report, so thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, we're gonna miss you.
I may
That's
be
definitely
here.
a loss.
Thanks for saying that.
But you gotta get your mom home a little bit.